a lot of data around, creating cultural competence. We will be doing a couple of activities, and some of you may think of those as games, and that's okay. So we'll be doing some activities. We'll watch a couple of videos. We'll talk about some of the things that are on the slides, and then we'll share among each other the things that are important for us to recognize about culture and about how to gain cultural competence. One thing I will tell you is that I am not the expert in this area. Everything that I'm going to share with you are things that I learned as a student. All right. I don't profess to necessarily know much more than you do about this topic, but I have asked myself some very serious questions. And as a high school student, as a high school teacher, I had to answer some of these questions from my students. And so, again, a lot of the things that I'll share with you are things that I learned as a teacher when trying to reach my students. So, I don't profess to be any more than what you see before you. All right? So, we'll go ahead and get started. So, we'll talk about cultural competence, looking in and looking out. One of the core concepts that we walked away last time in terms of talking about what diversity is this concept that there is dignity and honor in being human. And what did we say dignity was? What was something that we talked about last time that dignity was? Right? So what's dignity? Yes. Okay, a feeling of being valued, that you had value. Yes, ma'am.
Self-respect.
Self-respect, right? We talked about dignity. Is it something that you have or something that you give? It is in fact both, right? You give people dignity by recognizing their right to exist. Even if they choose not to exist the same way you do, but they have the right to exist. And the example that I gave last time was dealing with folks who are panhandlers, or as the kids would say, bums, right? They have the right to be a bum. And part of what, as the kids would say, but I can give them dignity and honor. And the way that I do that is by recognizing that they exist, making eye contact, smiling, saying hello. I give them lots of things, and money is not one of them, right? But I give people dignity. We also said that honor. What is honor? How would one describe honor? Yes, sir.
Appreciation for who they are, where they come from, what their state in life. We honor that, and it's a respect, and it's also appreciation.
Okay, so it is a respect thing. It's an appreciation. So is respect the same as honor? Are they synonymous? Are they the same? They're close in English, they're similar, but they are in fact not exactly the same, or they would just be one word, right? So honor is respect at a high level. Who in our society have we decided that we will not only just respect, because all of us have respect, but there are certain individuals that we said we will hold in high esteem, that we will give high respect to, we will give honor to. Who are those individuals? Our parents. We said we will give honor to our parents. Who else did we say we will give honor to as a society? Armed forces, right? Men and women who fight battles on our behalf that in many cases I'm too chicken to fight myself, right? So we said we will give them honor. Who else? Firefighters, police officers. And people don't like to say this, but even government workers, we say we will give them a certain degree of honor. We expect that they will hold our public trust in high esteem. And so we give them honor. I also give my grandparents honor because they've done things that have allowed me to be here. My grandfather's name is John Wesley. He was born J.W. And people around my mother said, that boy is too pretty just to have initials as his first name. So they changed his name to John Wesley. And I honor my grandfather in his passing because he did things for me that I couldn't do for myself. He was a very proud man who grew up in Memphis, Tennessee in the 20s and 30s. And as a proud man, he bit his lip. His name was John, but you would have swore his name was Boy. John didn't take that lightly. He swallowed that so that I could live. Had he spoken up and said, my name is John, don't call me Boy, what do you think would have happened to him? He might have been killed, right? Which meant that I would not have been able to be here today. And so it's important that we honor people's stories. We honor where they came from, all right? Please raise your hand if you bought a ticket or you passed a test that made you eligible to be born on this planet. None of us have done anything to bring ourselves here, right? And so it's important that we remember that each of our brothers and sisters, the people that we think are strangers, came here by invitation just like we did. I don't like to think about how that invitation came. It's pretty disgusting, but we all came by invitation. And we're all trying to figure out what it means to be who we're supposed to be. What is our purpose? What is our place? And lastly, what does it mean to be human? Human has two definitions. The first is a noun. It talks about being a biped, having opposable thumbs, a big brain, and a belly button. If you ever encounter a person without a belly button, be concerned. All right? Homo sapiens sapiens, the ones who know that they exist. That's human. But human is also an adjective. And what do adjectives do? They describe. So what is it that we teach our little nieces and nephews, our sons and our daughters, the babies that are in our life about what it means to be human? What lessons do we want them to know about what it means to be human? What do we teach them? What do we want them to know? Compassion, being caring. What else? To be honest. All right. Yes, ma'am? To be polite. What do we teach them about what it means to be human? That you recognize consequence, that you take responsibility for your actions, right? Those are all the things that we talk about in terms of what it means to be human. And so there is dignity and honor in being human. And once I realized that about other people, it became very easy for me to let people cut me off. Because they're doing the best they can with what they have. Even though they're being an idiot, I'm going to let them be an idiot so that I can continue my thing. All right? But there's dignity and honor in being human. What else did we say was true about human beings? What are the three things that human beings are constantly trying to work towards? They're trying to work towards what? Status. Status, okay. We said three specific things. What are the three things that all humans are working towards? Significance, yes. They want some sign of some significance. They're doing something so they can accomplish something or be recognized by a group or an individual. What else are they looking for? They're looking for some kind of sense of belonging, right? We don't do very well as a species alone, right? In my religious tradition, we talk about Adam and Eve. And at some point, Adam was going crazy because he just started naming stuff. He gave animals all sorts of weird names. And so God said, he can't be by himself anymore. Let's get him a woman, right? So we don't do very well alone. So we need to be in groups. And so that's something that we constantly try to work towards. And lastly, we need some kind of sign of what? Safety. So we're constantly looking for ways in which we're safe. Because when we're safe, we can what? Starts with re and ends in lax. We can relax. Otherwise, we're in this constant state of upheaval and nervousness, and that can be pretty draining. All right? So these are the three things that people and groups consistently strive for. All right? So we'll talk a little bit about our outline. We'll examine a definition and explore concepts surrounding cultural competence. We will provide examples of cultural competence. We will empower people to become actors/allies in terms of building your cultural competence. And we'll explore how we can maximize our ability to interact across cultures. All right? Our purpose today is to provide an understanding and an appreciation of cultural competence and increase people's discretionary effort. What is discretionary effort? Have you heard that term before? Okay, so I work for the county. I have contracted my time with the county. If I do my county work at 70% of what I'm supposed to do, have I met the qualifications for keeping my contract? 70% is what? Is that passing? It's 70%, but is it passing? Yes, I've done my work at 70%. Thus, I have fulfilled my contract. But I fulfilled it at what? The 70%, probably at the minimum of what I could do, right? But can I also fulfill that contract at 100%? Can I be excellent in everything that I do every day? Yes. That between that 70 and that 100% is my discretionary effort. I get to choose how much effort I put into my work. As long as I fulfill my contract, I'll stay employed, but you can't make me give 100%. Right? Any fishermen in here? People who fish? All right. How do you catch fish? You have to have the right bait, right? So ultimately, you don't go to the water, get in your boat and say, "Fish, get in my boat!" Right? That's not what you do. Ultimately, the fish has to what? Want to get caught. You have to have the right bait, and the fish has to want to get caught. So I want you to think about that, all right? So discretionary effort. We have the ability to determine if we're going to give 70% or 100%. And that range is largely dependent on how we feel about our workplace, all right? And if I'm in a place that's culturally competent, I'm more than likely going to give my 100% more than I am going to do my 70%. So just, that's a concept. We'll also talk about ways that this cultural competence can impact you at home, at work, and at play. So what is cultural competence? Why do we need it? And how do we know when we're done doing cultural competence? How do I know that I've arrived at cultural competence? So I do want to talk a little bit about Joseph Brandt's book, Dismantling Racism. It's something I'd encourage you to read. There are a lot of efforts that people have undertaken using that book to dismantle racism. I would say that many of those efforts have been misguided because they did not use the whole book. There is a reason why there's 150 pages in the book, and some people take out 3 or 4 pages and say, "Oh, I got a revelation." But I would encourage you that if you're interested in doing this kind of work, this is a book you should look at because there are 3 measures that he talks about that have kind of derailed how we should be thinking about diversity and cultural competence. And one is that most often when we talk about the legal rights and what the law says about how we should interact and that kind of stuff. And I believe in the law. I live and I will die by the Constitution of the United States. And I will hold everybody who is within my vicinity to those same standards that are written in that document. All right? So I think that document is very important. There is something important about the law. Can I legislate how you feel? No, I can't. Right? And so a lot of times when we've talked about diversity issues, we've tried to legislate how people feel or how people think or what their intentions are. And the fact of the matter is we can't do that. There's no way to really do that. So it is key and important for us to understand that we have to look at this as a heart problem or a heart issue. But we'll get to that in just a little bit. All right? We'll skip that. So on your table is a card, and this just talks about the complexity of who we are. There are groups that we've elected to be a part of. There are groups that we were born into. And this is the complexity of what diversity is, or how we're diverse as individuals. But I think the most important key point of all of this is that all of these groups that we find ourselves a part of all impact, ultimately, our personality. And that's what makes us who we are. All right? I'm not just a black guy. I'm so many more other things. And so it's important when we talk about diversity issues, we talk about cultural competence, that we look beyond just our superficial makeup and see that there are so many other things that also make us who we are. All right? So what I'd like for you to do is, in your packet, you should see a drawing that looks like this, or you can use a piece of paper, either way. So if you haven't gotten one of the handouts, there are handouts on the table, and you should see a drawing that looks like this. All right? Cool. So this is the circle of all human knowledge! Okay, it's a little melodramatic. All right? Let's say that this is the pie of all human knowledge. And what I want you to do with this pie is I want you to cut yourself 3 pieces. All right? The first piece is of everything that there is to know. Everything. All science, all math, all languages, all religions. I want you to cut yourself a piece of pie relative to the size of what you know of everything that there is to know. All right? So the first piece is, I want you to cut yourself a piece of pie the size of what you know compared to everything that there is to know. So what are some of the things that are in this particular piece of pie for you? What kinds of things do you know? What do you know?
My name, my heritage.
Do you know your name? Do you know your heritage? Other folks, what do you know? Yes, sir.
Cultural religious practices.
Okay, you know your cultural religious practices. All right. Something else you know. Okay, you know what you do for a living. All right. One more person. What's something that you know? You know about your family. All right. Cool. So now we have what we know. Now we're going to move on to our second piece of pie. In your second piece of pie, I want you to draw a piece of pie that's relative to the size of what you know you do not know. All right? What you know you do not know. For example, I know that I do not know Mandarin Chinese. I know that I don't know that. I know that I don't know how to fly a space shuttle. Those are things that I'm aware of that I do not know. So create to the best of your ability. Now remember, there's a third piece, and we'll get to that third piece in just a second. So to the best of your ability, create that second piece of pie. What you know, you do not know. All right? So I have what I know. I now have what I know I don't know. What are some examples of things that you know you do not know? Astrophysics. Please raise your hand if you also do not know astrophysics. All right? Cool, cool, cool. What's something else that you know you don't know? Greek. Please raise your hand if you know you do not know Greek. All right? One more. One more thing that you know you don't know. You had something written down because you are chuckling. What did you have written down?
The airspeed velocity of the laser on the wall.
Yes. Please raise your hand if you don't know what he just said. All right. So it's obvious that there are things that we know, there are things that we know we don't know, and what do you think is left? What's the third piece of pie? That's right. What you don't know, you don't know. And it was funny because somebody said, hey, you got that from Donald Rumsfeld. I said, hey, you can use it for good or for evil. You decide. All right? So we have what we know, we have what we know we don't know, we have what we don't know. And what might be in that piece of pie? It's a trick question. You don't know what you don't know, right? We also might call that a blind spot. All right? We also might call that a blind spot. Now, part of our endeavors as a human being is to eliminate what we don't know, and expand what we know, right? To boldly go where no one has gone before. Okay, all right. So how do we expand, or how do we get rid of what we don't know? How do we expand what we know? What is that process called? Where do we send our kids in the fall? We send them to school, but what's the product that we expect by them going to school? Education is the process, but what is the product that we hope that they get? Knowledge or learning? Right? So that's part of the process. That knowledge process gets us to this thing called learning. So what is learning? Processing information. All right? What else? Learning. Experiences. Learning. What else is learning? It's reading. Learning. So before I could teach, I had to take a class on, and I had to be certified, because apparently I'm already certifiable, but they wanted to make sure that I was certified to teach. And so I took this class, and as a part of this class over at St. Thomas, I had an instructor, and I had to come up with a philosophy of education. And all the books that they had us read, it wasn't helpful. I wasn't able to get much from it. And then it hit me one day. I went to visit my sister, and my 4-year-old niece at the time was running around being precocious, as 4-year-olds are. And so my sister started cooking dinner. My 4-year-old niece goes into the kitchen and puts her hand on the stove. What happens to my niece's hand? It burns. She cries. She has an owie. Tuesday night, my sister's cooking dinner for her family. My 4-year-old niece goes into the kitchen to help and puts her hand on the stove. What happens to my niece's hand? It burns. Did my niece learn? I hear a lot of people say no. I see people shaking their heads. How is it that I know that she did not learn? She repeated the same behavior. And a lot of times when we talk about this concept of learning, we talk about these really great esoteric, transcendental mental constructs about what learning is, when in fact it's very simple and very basic, that I know that someone has learned because there is a what? Change in their behavior. All right? So to get rid of this don't know, or this blind spot stuff, I have to engage in a process of learning, which ultimately has some kind of impact on my behavior. So there's a change in behavior. Now, all of this stuff, so I have what I know I don't know, and I have what I don't know. Where did I get this stuff? Where did this come from? I learned it, okay? Who taught it to me? my family, my school, right? We'll refer to all of this as a paradigm. And a paradigm is simply the way you see the world. And so if my parents gave me this gift, what's the problem with this gift? What's problematic with this gift, this paradigm that my parents gave me? They gave me what they knew, they gave me what they knew they didn't know, and then they gave me what they don't know they don't know. It's filtered. If somebody brought a pie to a party that you were giving, and the majority of the pie was missing, what would you think about that person? Would they be invited back? No. Right? Typically, the problem with paradigms that we get from our families is that they're hugely and largely incomplete. And is that our fault? No, it's not our fault. Where did our parents get their paradigm or their way of seeing the world? From their parents. And where did their parents get it from? From their parents. And so it's not anybody's fault that we see the world the way we do. That's partly how we're wired. But now it becomes, because we're enlightened beings, it becomes our responsibility to do something with that. Particularly if this paradigm that I have is not helping me reach my goals. We talked a little bit about racist people last time. When will a racist person or a bigoted person or a sexist person change? When will they change? When will they change? When they want to. When their behavior no longer reaches their goals, helps them reach their goals. But if they're reaching their goals through that behavior, you can talk to your blue in the face, and what's going to happen with their behavior? It's not going to change. Right? So there's a bit of catch-up from last time. All right? So I'm going to play a video, and what I want you to do, and many of you have seen this video before, so please humor me. I'm not incredibly creative. I use stuff that has been used by others and taught to me, but I want you to humor me in this particular activity. And what I want you to do is there will be kids in white shirts and in black shirts. But I want you to pay attention to the kids in white shirts. They will be bouncing or passing a ball to each other. So I want you to count the number of times the people in white shirts bounce or pass a ball to each other. Is that clear? Okay, can someone repeat back the directions to me? Okay, so count how many times the kids in white shirts bounce the ball. Here we go. All right, so how many times do people count? You get 10, and we get a different number than 10? 28, okay? 26, all right. 24, all right, cool. What was written on the wall? S? One S, 6 S's, 1 S, okay? 2 S's, all right. How many doors were there? 3 doors? Okay. Was there anything else that was interesting that occurred in the video? A what? Please raise your hand if you saw a gorilla. Okay, we should just go on with the workshop. We shouldn't watch that again, should we? Right? So let's watch it again and let's see what happens. So how many S's? 2 S's. and 3 elevator doors. So what happened? How did people miss the gorilla? Okay, so I told you to count the bouncers, the people with white shirts. You were concentrating. Okay. When we talk about this concept of cultural competence, when we talk about this concept of culture, it is very easy for us to get distracted by stereotypes, by what people tell us about other groups, the paradigms that they give us about other groups. And is it possible, as we're watching for those stereotypes, or we're looking for those paradigms, those ways of thinking that people have given us, maybe it's our family members or friends or our communities that we grew up, is it possible that we could be missing something while we're paying attention to the things that they ask us to? That's possible, right? So I would encourage you to have an open mind. I would encourage you to have an open mind. So we'll continue that. All right. So what I'd like to do now is engage us in a game. Is anyone up for a good game? Okay, cool. If I can make sure that we have at least 5 people at a table. I see a table with 2 there. I see a table of 3 there. I see 2 people here. I see 1 person here. If we can make sure that there are tables that have 5 people at a table, that would be great. All right. So we will. One person will be the table boss. The other 4 will be the players. All right. The table boss will stay at the table, and the table boss is the keeper of the rules. All right. So, so the table boss's job is very simple. They are to make sure that everyone adheres to the rules, and to make sure that they solve all conflicts. All right? So that's the rule of the table boss. So they keep order. So I'd like for you to select who your table boss is at this time. The table boss, please raise your hand. All right? So in your packet, I'd like the table bosses to take out the rules. And I'd like for the table boss to read the rules with the group. And then after the group has a good comprehension of the rules, I would like for them to play for about, 3 minutes or so. All right? So, and actually, let's do this. The best table bosses, the best 2 out of 3 wins. All right? So, read the rules. Make sure everyone understands the rules. Play the best 2 out of 3, and then we'll move on to the next piece. All right? You may begin. All right, I'd like you to stop wherever you are in your game. Hand the cards back to the table boss. And your cards back to the table boss. We're now going to start casino round. I'd like for the table bosses to take the directions and put them back in the envelope, the bag. And now we're going to start casino round. Casino round is very important that the table bosses help keep order. No talking across the table, no hinting. I know some of you guys have gotten really slick with the eyebrow thing, so we're going to make sure none of that. If you have your gambler's glasses with you, you can put them on. All right. So table bosses keep order. We're gonna play around for about 3 minutes. Again, the best 2 out of 3. Silence is demanded, and table bosses help me with that. All right. So we're gonna play the best out of 3, and then we'll go to round 2. So this is round 1. We'll go to round 2. If we have time, we might get to round 3. But we'll start with round 1, and that starts now. The table bosses is your table. You're not hearing any talking. Table bosses, control your tables. There's about 2 minutes for this first round. One minute. Forty-five seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. I'd like for the winners at each of those tables to please stand up. The winners at each of those tables, please stand up. You guys decide. Paper, rock, scissors. How are we going to do that? The folks have the most tricks in the amount of time. That last round. So paper, rock, scissors. All right. So all of those who are winners, I want you to find another table. Rotate to another table. Winners, rotate to another table. Nope. Nope, you can go anywhere else. You can stay together with your partner. With your partner, go to another table. So winning partners, move to another table. Winning partners, move to another table. So who does not have a set of people who are new? Oh, that's your table? Can you guys do me a favor? Actually, can you guys move to that table? Because that's their table. We'll just start. If you guys can move to that table. Oh, okay. And then they will move. Thank you so much. All right. This round will be about 2 minutes, and it starts now. Table bosses, if you can make sure that you keep order, that everyone plays fair, and that there's no talking. I appreciate it. Thank you. 2 minutes. Table bosses, no talking. No laughing either. That's 2 out of 3. You got 1 minute? 30 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one, and I'd like the winners from that round to please stand. Winners from that round, please stand. I'd like for you and your partner to find another table. This is for the third round. You guys want to come up here? You guys want to come up here? Gentlemen with the glass. Oh, yeah, come on up. All right, last round. This last round is a minute and a half. You may begin now. We're talking. Thirty seconds. 30 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one, and game over. All right. You may return to your seats, table block, put the cards back in All right. If you can hear my voice, clap once. If you can hear my voice, clap twice. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 4 times. Good job. Thank you. So let's talk about this game. Were there anything interesting, anything worth mentioning as you proceeded in our little crazy casino? Why would I have us spend time playing a card game?
You gave different rules.
What was that?
You gave different rules.
I gave different rules to each table, okay? This was about what?
What you didn't know.
It was about what you didn't know, okay? Why was that important that I gave different rules to each table? How did that, what's the relevance to having a conversation about cultural competence? How is that relevant? You went to the table and you didn't know what the rules were at that table, okay? But you thought you did.
Every culture basically plays the same game, but the rules are slightly different. They have slightly different.
Okay. So a lot of cultures play a similar game, but it has different twists, or there are some nuances that are different about the game. All right? Yes, ma'am.
And if you're not from that culture, like the culture that you entered, it can be confusing and you feel isolated and not heard.
Okay? So if you're not a part of that culture, or you go to a different culture, you can feel isolated, not heard. Yes, sir.
We made each table conform to our rules.
You made each table. You must be an American. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say we were forced to adapt.
You were forced to.
to figure it out pretty quickly.
Okay, you were forced to adapt and forced to figure it out pretty quickly. All right? Yes.
We were people that had the same rules, so we felt very welcome when we were like,
You felt very welcome at a table that had a very similar rules, right? Yeah. Yes.
it was weird. We went to a table that had very different rules, but they weren't really keeping track. We won the first round. And then when we started to lose the second round, I picked up pretty fast that they were playing the opposite of what we were playing. And I felt immediately defeated, like I gave up on winning, I gave up on fitting in. It was like instant.
It was once you figured out the game, you knew that there wasn't any hope, so you gave up. Okay? Or there was a feeling of wanting to give up. And you said you couldn't speak.
Yeah, you couldn't speak, so you never learned what it was like at that table, what the rules were.
Okay? So not being able to speak, you weren't able to really get a grasp on what was going on at that table. All right? Yes, ma'am.
Flexible, you move along, so you were flexible, but yet confused, but still have fun.
Okay? So you still were able to have fun, you were confused, but you had to be flexible all at the same time. Yes, sir.
Did all of the leaders lead?
That's a good question. Did all of the table leaders or the table captains, did they all lead? They drive that process? Yes, sir.
We just played our game, and we thought aces were high at every table, so we just. I didn't even know that at two other tables that the rules had changed the evening.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, sir.
As a leader, there was recognition that people were questioning how the game was being played without saying it.
Yes. Did anyone notice that? Did you notice that people were questioning the game? How did you know that they either didn't understand or didn't agree with what was going on?
We should pick up the
Okay, so people start picking up the winning hand. You're like, no, that's not the right one. What else? Were there some universal, nonverbal cues that you're picking up, like? Was anyone frustrated in that game? Did they get? Was there a level of frustration? Yeah. What is the real life parallel to this game? Are there folks that we work with that have these similar experiences as they're trying to work with us? Yes. Now, as a person who went to a different culture, did you have some expectation that the game would be played fair when you went to a different table? Yes. What happened when you started to figure out that it may not be fair or it was just confusing? Did your discretionary effort increase? Did it say, you know what, I'm really motivated to do more and to participate more in this game? Or did you get to a point where your discretionary effort was either plateaued or in some way decreased? It decreased? Okay. Yes, sir.
I actually questioned the leader.
Okay.
I thought the leader was out to lunch.
You thought the leader was out to lunch, that the table captain didn't know what they were doing, right? Because where I come from, the paradigm that I'm operating with, certain things are supposed to happen in certain kinds of ways. Right? And so a lot of times, the paradigms that we're operating from could sometimes be incomplete. Right? There's a huge part of this pie that is missing. And so I want you to think about that in terms of cultural competence. One of the things I will tell you is that you will not get everything right all the time. I mean, there are, in the metro, I would imagine around 50 or so languages. People who come from, almost as many cultural backgrounds as those languages. And can I be expected to know all of them? No, I can't, right? At the same time, I can give people dignity, honor, and respect for being human and meet them there. That's where my cultural competence starts. It starts with me knowing I don't know everything, and I don't have to, right? Because I have a network of brothers and sisters that can also help me, and if we're all being, giving people dignity and honor for being human, we can overcome some of those obstacles, all right? So let's go to your packet. There's some concepts I'd like to walk you through and talk about. So how do we get to a place where we have our current cultural ways of viewing the world? And I won't go through all of these slides because you can read yourself, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. One is that we have this cycle of oppression that we're all kind of born into. And what happens is, in our early years, our parents, our family, the people who care about us, tell us about the world around us. They give us information. The problem with that is that this is the information that we end up receiving. We end up receiving their paradigms. And then we engage in a process, so they help us work through a process called socialization. Or as my grandmother would say, learning how to act. A-C-K. Boy, you better learn how to act. Right? So we engage in the socialization process. Then the cycle gets reinforced by our institutions until we get this information internalized, and then before we know it, we are colluding with the system, or we're conspiring secretly, or without knowing, we conspire with the system, and the cycle continues. And then we teach our children, we teach our nieces and nephews, our brothers and sisters, about a system that we've been taught about. All right? So I'll give you an example of how this plays out. So in our early years, we learn about the world from people who we love and trust. They set our paradigms, they establish the truth, and they create a framework for us. All right? So here's an example. Can you tell me the story of the discovery of America? What's the popular version of the discovery of America? Columbus. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Right? So that history is a sound one, and I think that they keep it in textbooks. We still talk about it because it's a sound story. However, what's the problem with that story? Right? So my neighbor just got a new Porsche, and so I'm going to use the Columbus defense to discover his Porsche. I'm going to take his Porsche. Right? What is the Columbus defense? Columbus discovered America, and he discovered a place where there were already what? People. So how can you really discover some place that somebody already is? But that's a whole other story, right? So in our early years, we get all of these things prescribed to us from people who care about us. In our early years, we get missing information, we get missing history, we get biased history, and we get those stereotypes. People teach us to look for people bouncing balls instead of telling us to look for gorillas, right? Then in socialization, we learn how to act. We learn what our roles are. We learn what race, ethnic backgrounds, and gender roles are. We learn how to build our peer groups. We learn what the morals and the norms are of our culture. We learn how to behave appropriately in our culture. That's socialization. And ultimately, it's learning how to behave in our culture. Then we get reinforcements through our institutional educational system, our government policies, the media, religious institutions. We also get reinforced by prejudice and stereotypes. So, for example, if we go through that, use this model. Let me go back. If we use this model and we talk about Christopher Columbus, right? So in our early years, they taught us in school about 1492. What systems reinforce that story of the discovery of America, 1492? What institutions support that? Columbus Day. We get a paid day off, right? They teach it in schools as part of the curriculum. There are even, I remember a Charlie Brown special about Columbus, right? And I love Charlie Brown because they had the one dancer that did this. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Love Charlie Brown. So that reinforces it, and it becomes a part of our institution. And then, and it's really interesting, even in our religious traditions, that gets reinforced. Now, I know that St. Christopher Columbus, is not the same as the explorer Christopher Columbus. But I do find it ironic that the St. Christopher is the patron saint of lost travelers. I don't know, I just see it, I think it's just weird, it's weird. And so our cycle gets reinforced. And collusion is simply acting together, using our unconscious bias to act in a certain way to keep the system going. All right? So we want to talk about how do we move out of collusion and actually into actual movement and behavior. All right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the cultural competence continuum. I'm thinking, do folks need